Okay, so I'm the last speaker, so it's a little strange. Okay, I'm going to just introduce myself. I'm Shen Yong. I'm a physicist by training, and I look after the Institute for Pedagogical Innovation, Research, and Excellence. Okay, so I'm going to just go on to my slides. So interestingly, um, I've met Prof. Soon about 1.5 weeks ago in Beijing, and we're having this conversation about this conference. And he's a philosopher, so he was wondering, maybe we can have a little bit of philosophy, talking about pedagogy. So one of the things that actually I've been thinking a lot is about the first principles. Can we develop pedagogy from first principles? And how are you going to collect your first principles, right? So this is something that I've been thinking about since I left Beijing 1.5 weeks ago. And so this is my homework, Prof. Sun. So if we go back, okay, I mean, there is a lot of changes that's happening these few years. Okay, but we see that, okay, I mean, it makes us feel insecure, but there are also principles that are timeless, okay, from teaching and learning. So maybe we should actually look for some of these principles that are invariant in time, that doesn't change. And maybe we can build something robust out of them. So if we look at education, we have many philosophers, psychologists, and I mean, in recent times, developments in neuroscience actually allow us to actually think a lot more deeply about the process of learning. Okay, so this is one of the basic and actually one of the very powerful concept in education, right? The zone of proximal development. I just want to by a show of hands, how many of you have heard of this theory by Vygotsky before? Okay, about half, right? So, the students have prior knowledge, and sometimes in certain areas that you want them to learn, they are able actually to learn by themselves unassisted, right? That's the innermost circle. Okay, and then there is this wider circle that no matter what you do, it will be quite out of reach of them. But in between, there is this zone of proximal development, whereby you can give them a little bit of things, provide some help, and they will be able to complete the tasks. Okay, so this is something that I want you to keep in mind for a few more slides. And later, we will actually think, maybe how can we put AI in this picture? And maybe that can give us some basic principles of operation in incorporating AI in teaching and learning. Okay, so this talk, I'll just put a disclaimer, is a lot of my own speculative thoughts and from my own personal experience. Okay, so feel free to disagree, and I'm happy to hear from you so that I can improve my hypothesis. Okay, and Bloom's taxonomy. Okay, how many of you have heard of Bloom's taxonomy? Okay, I think this is probably much better known to folks, and this is a way of analyzing the level of thinking, okay, from the simplest, remember, understand, to the highest level, which is to create. Not every educator agrees with Bloom's taxonomy, but we'll just put it out here as this is actually one of the things that educators use to actually calibrate the levels of thinking. Okay, I'm going to actually introduce another taxonomy in a while. Okay, but I just want to bring out something about information and making connection between information. Okay, so I'm going to introduce to you, okay, the next taxonomy. I'm not sure how many of you have heard of this, the Solo taxonomy. Okay, how many of you have heard of the Solo taxonomy? Okay, much fewer. Okay, so this is a very interesting system, okay, whereby you actually look at knowledge in pieces here. Okay, so here you have the lowest level, pre-structural. You do not know anything about the topic, and it's just a dot. And you know one thing, you know one concept about the topic, that's like one strip. So we call that unistructural. Then next, you can know a few things about the topic, but you haven't made any connections yet, right? That's multi-structural. Okay, so up to this point is surface learning. It's easy. It doesn't require a lot of effort in the learning. Okay, but it's when you start making connections and seeing the relationship between the concepts that you start going into deep thinking, deeper learning, right? And of course, the deepest you can go is the extended abstract. You can see beyond the established links, and you can actually come up with new knowledge, right? So this is the solo taxonomy. So I think this is actually quite a useful taxonomy for us to analyze knowledge. And interestingly, there is some semblance, okay, with what we see in neuroscience, in the formation of learning. When learning takes place, it's actually connections that's being made in neurons, right? Here I have Professor Barbara Oakley's talk. We have it on our website at Inspire. It's a very nice layman introduction to the topic of neuroscience. If you're interested, you could just check this out. Okay, so going down actually very to the fundamental level, we have actually can think about the neurons, right, in the learning process and how the connections are formed. And that has some resemblance to what we've seen in the solo taxonomy. And there are also research recently, okay, this I also learned from Professor Barbara Oakley's talk very recently. She came to NTU. Okay, there is this 85% rule for optimal learning. So this is both in machine learning, training the computer, and they believe it also works for animals and maybe humans as well. So if you let someone learn something, you do not want to make it too easy, that you always get it right, but you also do not want it to make it too hard that you will frustrate the learner. So 85% seems to be a nice percentage for optimal learning. So something that we can keep in mind. So back to our ZPD. Okay, now with AI. Okay, so one way of actually incorporating AI, which I think without eroding cognitive abilities, is actually to use it to provide the missing pieces for students, okay, in the zone of proximal development. But you do not make the connection for them. Okay? You leave it to them to make the connection for themselves. So that's my very simple strategy, right, with regards to the use of AI. Okay, so you provide you with something that will help you, but you will still need to think. So you have these pieces to scaffold you, okay, but it doesn't take away the thinking process. Okay, but of course, students, when they prompt, they will just go to their own GPT or Gen AI, and they'll just get the answer very quickly. So we need to be very intentional in training the students on how to use this, okay, in order for them to be successful in their learning. Okay, so this is a quote from Socrates. Okay, I think Socrates is probably the most featured philosopher for today. You hear about him in the morning, and now in this last session here, I'm going to talk about Socrates again. Okay, he says this. Okay, actually he doesn't write. He's actually anti-writing. He thinks writing is a technology that will take away thinking. You're supposed to memorize everything and not write it down. Okay, so someone else must have written this down. I think it's by Plato. I cannot teach anybody anything. I can only make them think. Okay, so this is one part with regards to information and information connection, making connections between information. Okay, the next part is actually a topic that we had just now in our panel discussion, because we are worried about what is there left for humans when AI becomes so powerful. So it is something that actually has bothered me since 2 years ago. Okay. Okay, so this is a summary, okay, of the information. So what should we teach our students to distinguish themselves from AI? Okay, so just now we heard about the human values, the important human values, right, that we want to cultivate in our students. Okay, So I'm trying to think from this from a more methodological approach, actually. So if you look at the performance of AI, it's quite scary. Okay, the horizontal line that goes to 0 is the average human capability. Okay, so after 2015, you see that the AI performance have exceeded and is continuing to exceed human capabilities, right? This is in image recognition, handwriting recognition, speech recognition, and here you have all the other cognitive tasks, okay? They will just overtake humans. And then actually when I saw this, I was just thinking, is there something that the humans can do and AI cannot, and what is left? So this is my own personal list of human traits in an AI pervasive world. I'm not sure whether you're collecting a list for yourself. So things like insatiable curiosity and so on. But this is like quite random. So I'm just thinking whether there's something that is underlying all these traits that can be written as a principle. So recently I have this thought. Okay, there are two different worlds that we are in. Okay, I mentioned a little about this in the morning, but it's very hard to describe that without a graphic. There's a large language model world where we have a collection of words and the relationship between the words. Okay, and then we have our human world. Okay, before any technology, there is the physical world. You have your laws of physics, chemistry, and human interaction, psychology, human emotions, and so on. Okay, and you have it there. There's a physical and a social world. And we always need to make sense of what is happening. Okay, when we learn something from a book, it's in a text. Okay, so we need to make connection with the physical reality. So we need to do sense making. But interestingly, okay, it was sort of mentioned in passing by Simon this morning when he spoke about the different developments in NVIDIA, that actually a lot of things cannot be captured perfectly, right, in data as data. And of course, okay, there's also other AIs. So we're just talking about large language models. Okay, there are also other AIs. And this imperfection of words in capturing reality was in ancient philosophy. Okay, I didn't read the whole Tao Te Ching. Okay, this is probably the only line I know, and it's very useful for this AI talk now because it's talking about words. Okay, 道可道，非常道；名可名，非常名。Okay, so maybe I'll unpack it. I'll read the version translated by Claude 4.5. Okay, it shows the language, the relationship between language and reality. Okay, and there's a deep skepticism between the language ability to capture the true nature of existence. Okay, it tells you about the limitation of words in describing the fundamental nature of physical and the metaphysical world. Okay, so there are a lot of things that are in words, like, okay, maybe love, jealousy, compassion. Okay, but all these things cannot be fully captured, okay, in words. Okay, I'm not sure whether there are other ways to capture these emotions, or thoughts, or relationships, or interactions. So maybe this is the place whereby humanity can flourish. So that's a speculation that I recently developed. Okay, so if we look at the traits, maybe I'll just pick out having a sense of humor. Large language model can generate jokes for you. But knowing a joke is not having a sense of humor. It's different. So to have a sense of humor, you need to know when to say the joke, when to pass a remark, how to say it, how to pace it, and whether it's culturally correct to say that so-called joke. So that, I think all those other things that is related to the sense of humor is probably presently cannot be captured with AI. Okay, I hope you'll not be able to, but I think it may be just a matter of time. So I think we can think a little bit more deeply of what actually distinguishes us from the AI technology. So there's one last thing that I think we should instill in our students, is this meditative self-awareness. Okay, when do you know that you really know something well? Okay, do you learn how to learn? But very unfortunately, usually our students only find out that they didn't learn something properly, and that's during a test, during an assessment, right? But is there a way to cultivate this awareness, okay, for them to know whether they've known something? So again, this is another quote. This is from 孔子. Okay, 知之为知之，不知为不知，是知也. Okay, so recognizing whether you know something or not knowing something is actually true knowledge. Okay, it's the essence of true understanding. Okay, so a quick summary. So these are the three things that have come to mind. So we want to talk about information and making connection between information. So I would like to think that that's the beginning of thinking or deep thinking. You want to explore areas where words and data cannot actually accurately capture the physical and social world. Okay, for our students, this is probably an area where humanity can flourish. And we want to teach our students learning about learning, to learn about learning. Okay, so that's all for my talk. Thank you for your kind attention. Okay, so maybe I'll take one or two questions if there's any. Yes, okay.
Hi. So I think this makes sense if you're, what is this called from an education point of view. I think from an institutional point of view, I would struggle to see how that will be operationalized, given that we need to put everybody on an ordinal scale of some kind. So I mean, your ranking of who gets the best grades, who gets onto the dean's list, all this will mostly break down, I sense, if we tried something like this.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree, and it will get worse because there'll be fewer jobs, and the bar is raised higher. The world, unfortunately, is likely going to be more competitive. Yeah. So I totally agree with you. But here, I'm just trying to think of some strategy that could put our students in a better position. Yeah, in a likely more competitive world. Yeah. Yes. Any other questions? Oh yes.
I got Ho Shen Yong. Anyway, Shen Yong was my teacher, so I love learning. It's because of him. Okay. This morning you raised a point about having some maturity stamp in terms of AI for different levels of students. I'm interested because I am a high school teacher, and then I do find that AI is designed by adults, for adults, but it's now being pervasive even down to the K-12 level. So maybe could you share some possible strategies on how to moderate the use of AI for students at the K-12 level?
So this will probably have to come in a very top-down way, actually. I think in Korea, they ban mobile phones in classrooms of sorts. So if you ban mobile phones, you probably can ban AI because it goes together, right? And you just want them to deal with the physical world, to deal with real humans, and not just go on social media and interact. So I think it maybe seem to be taking a step back, but I feel that it's going forward in terms of human interaction and human learning. So the idea that I had was the maturity rating is that you need to demonstrate a certain level of competency or knowledge or skills before the AI tool is released to you for your use. But this is a very controlled environment that we're talking about. So I do not have any idea actually how to control it, but I would advise my students, and of course, hopefully they're sensible, and they will use AI in the right way. Okay, but first they need to know what it does to them. It's very similar to GPS, right? It's very easy to use a GPS, just to blindly follow it and get to your destination. And you find that, no, you suddenly lose spatial awareness, actually. So I had that feeling. So what I do is, now with GPS, I will learn the road from the GPS. I'll memorize it. Okay, and if I go to the same place 3 times, the 3rd time I will not use the GPS, unless I want to check for traffic jams, right? So I'm very aware what technology does to me. Okay, it can do certain things for me, but what it does to me is also very important. Yeah. Any other questions? Yes. I think I'll probably take that as the last question. Any other questions I will not hold? Okay, so we have.
Thanks, Prof. Kind of like a philosophical question, because your talk was philosophical, right? I haven't thought through it completely, but I thought in terms of getting your opinions and thoughts on this, or maybe to add to the thinking that you are asking about. So the point is that the space between the zone of unattainable as well as what is available, right? And we are saying that AI will come in that in-between space and provide scaffolding, right? So provide the scaffolding for students to learn. But the way I think about it is that we are providing scaffolding in very narrow fields, right? And actually, the AI can provide scaffolding in multiple fields that cuts across all areas of value creation, way beyond what institutionalized learning, right, traditionally organized to provide scaffolding for, right? So what's your comment on that now? So then the second question related to that is that we are trying to find a new role for education where those boundaries of conventional learning are fast eroding. Beyond the school's unique value proposition to provide a degree, to provide the machinery of the school, right, that provides recognition of attainment, right? If you leave that aside, right, then technically there is no other additional value for the school to conscribe learning within these domains, because the AI can come in to provide this scaffolding across all areas without that boundary, and allowing people to create value creation in their own creativity and constructs. Then the last point I want to say is that if we take the moralistic argument that we are modeling values to our students, then without the machinery and the lived experience and all that, there's no role for the educator to model that experience to the teacher. That is the role for the family or for the parents, right? We hold that moral high ground because we are living the experience of being both a teacher and a practitioner. And then the students say, I want to become like you, right? As a chemistry, as a teacher or whatever, or a doctor or whatever. But if I have no ability to model that, why should I be modeling moralistic values to you, right? So they can learn from anyone else. They don't have to come to an institution to learn that. So that's my fundamental thing. I think we have not answered that question of, in the future, what is the role of AI in education still, you know?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks for your very well thought out questions. For the very last point, I think if you come to train as for example, an engineer, okay, or an environmentalist, right, in a university, I think there are specialized knowledge and specialized practices that you have to learn from a specialized individual, right? There are certain skills and traits and thoughts, right? For example, if you are doing design, are you going to do something about planned obsolescence, for example? I design something and you get spoiled in 3 years, for example. Is that ethical? Is that a sustainable thing? If you are a professor, what is your view on these things, right? So I think you are probably unlikely going to get this from your family members unless they are in this field. Okay, so that's one. So I think there are certain areas that you only pick up in a institute of higher education where we have specialized knowledge. So this is just ZPT. It's used for very open-ended questions. It can also be used for closed-ended questions. So here we have AI or instructor providing the missing pieces. So I agree with you. In fact, this classroom is actually built for interdisciplinary collaborative learning, right? And one of the topics that they learn is actually energy, okay, in the course on sustainability. So is energy a physics problem? Is it an engineering problem? Is it an economics problem? Is it a business problem? Or is it a social problem? Okay, the answer is all of the above. Okay, so that's why we need this room, so that we can have 4 instructors to co-teach, because you can't find one person that's expert in all these areas. So we are actually playing the role of doing the ZPD for the students, okay, so that they could learn beyond the disciplinary silos. So I hope that answers your questions. Yeah, so that sort of makes us still, in some ways, valuable. Although parts of it can be obtained from AI, but I think there's still value in human thoughts, right, in certain areas. Okay, so should I? Okay, we'll take as the last question, and I'll take any questions offline later. Yeah.
Okay, so thank you so much. It's not a question, it's a comment.
Okay.
I think you're the only speakers today mentioned about an Asian thinkers. So I actually appreciate it. So you're the only speaker today to mention the Asian thinkers.
Asian thinkers.
Yes,
Oh.
so I actually appreciate that.
Okay.
So my question is, so from your own perspective, so do you think it would be useful to talk about Asian philosophy when we are discussing about AI in education?
I would go past the boundaries of the countries and look at all philosophers, because those that have survived the test of time are probably things that are really valuable, right? If this is something from 2,000 years ago, and all the educators have been talking about this, and it's still not outdated, it is probably something that we should take a closer look at, because it is something that has stood the test of time. Yeah, so I would go across all nationalities and look at the different types of teaching philosophies, that has worked well. Yeah. Okay, so thank you very much for the engagement.